Ms. Scholten, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Webster. Thank you so much to all of our witnesses today. Apologize for the gravelly voice. I'm not sick. I lost my voice cheering for our beloved Detroit Lions. All grit. We really want to thank you for your testimony. This is an incredibly precarious time in our world and in the Red Sea. While the humanitarian impacts are deeply felt across the globe, constituents back home are also concerned about the deep economic impact that this will have, as they're already struggling with hyperinflation and putting food on the table. I have a series of economic questions about the impacts of this war, and also what we can do about it here in Congress. So my first question is for Mr. Gold. Our economy is still recovering from supply chain shortages that we experienced after the pandemic, with some industries still struggling to access essential components. From our national GDP to increased operating costs for maritime shipping, do you have an estimated cost to our economy if the route through the Red Sea is no longer a viable option?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, we do not have an estimate at this point in time. I think there's so many variables as to what the actual impact would be. I think, as Mr. Dar noted, the supply chain will adjust and will adapt, and I think you have to figure out what those additional costs will be. We are seeing some of those costs that are being passed along now, especially to small and medium-sized enterprises who don't have the ability to negotiate and push those costs off. But again, as we're in new negotiating cycle for new contracts, that's going to be an impact. The impact on congestion at our ports, if that does materialize, is going to have an impact as well. So I think, again, preparing for what's to come is where we need to be doing a lot of focus now. I agree with Mr. Dar that the focus on infrastructure, both on kind of the land side, but also through the gate, is critically important, but also looking at kind of the IT systems as well. I think one of the areas where we kind of failed throughout the pandemic was that communication aspect, which is so critical among supply chain partners. The ability to know what's coming in and when and how it's going to transit through the supply chain is incredibly important, and unfortunately, we haven't seen that progress yet on that aspect of this to be able to plan accordingly.
Thank you. Mr. Dar, you mentioned your hopefulness that Congress's investments in port and landside infrastructure included in the bipartisan infrastructure law will increase capacity and resiliency. Can you talk a little bit more about how some of those investments can help us cope?
Yes, ma'am. Those investments, in large part at the port level, let me give you an example. In the U.S., we are largely constrained by the geography of the ports and the terminals that we have. And so to build a new terminal, while not impossible, is very, very difficult, and they tend to encroach upon other users of that land space. So the more we can do to densify the operations in the terminals and make them more efficient, while also, I should point out, in our company's model, maintaining the workforce, because it can be done, and it can be done effectively because the volumes go up. That's a good start. And being as thoughtful as possible about those sorts of investments in particular, I think helps us the most, because also some of those investments can be done faster than to, say, identify a new site and then all that goes with that. It is a lot that goes with that and building that out. Second, I would say the road infrastructure needs huge work. And the rail operators also need whatever incentivization is there to maintain additional surge capacity to meet the rail networks, because whatever we can put, the rail network needs, because whatever we can put on rail is avoided going on the roads and overstressing that again.
It's all a part of the shipping and transport larger ecosystem. What other suggestions do you have for us in Congress? Obviously, containing the conflict, ending the conflict is a major path to ending or to maintaining this route through the Red Sea. But in the interim, this is a daily problem. What can we do here in Congress to help make sure that we are supporting the industry?
So again, I'll start with maybe what you didn't want me to focus on, but I think it is important. The shooting has to stop. It has to be safe enough for us to send our sons or daughters or people that have trusted their lives to us into that region. When it comes to what we can do day to day, we have what we have, and we have a substantially altered series of networks trying to deliver the cargo, and I would say being as prepared as possible from retail shelving all the way down to the key side will help us avoid another situation like we had during the pandemic. But I want to be very clear. The scale of this disruption comes at a better time when there is additional capacity both at sea and ashore. And second, the scale of the cost excursions, the underlying expenses to us to operate that have to find their way into the market is, to this point, nowhere near what it was during the pandemic. It happened very quickly,
Right.
but if you look at what the analysts are putting out there, we may have seen the top in some of the markets, not for me to speculate on, but you can review that yourself. And then lastly, that on the export trades are under a lot less stress and price pressure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the additional time. I yield.
Kelly yields